All right, you guys, can everyone please take your seats? We're going to begin the Q&A portion. So please, if you just can grab your coffee or scones or whatever, that would be great. All right, so we're going to begin. I'm sorry. Did someone have a question? Yes. I'm sorry. I'm going to introduce them first. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here we have Gerald Gubatan. Okay. He is the senior planning deputy with Gil Cedillo's, Councilmember Gil Cedillo's office. He previously held positions with the LA City Planning Department and the Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles. Gerald works in land use planning and economic development matters in Council District 1. We welcome Gerald. Yeah. Next we have Dr. Tom Williams here, and Dr. Tom Williams has worked throughout the world as a scientist, engineer, and city planner. Although he retired after 40 years in the private sector, he remains active and engaged. He has been a member of several organizations dedicated to responsible urban development and preservation of resources, including the Golden State Audubon, the Sierra Club's Transportation and Water Committees, and Citizens Coalition for a Safe Community, and a board member of LA 32's Neighborhood Council. He has also been instrumental, as you can see from his hat, in stopping the 710 freeway expansion from going into Pasadena. Also, just as some of you know, Dr. Tom is a regular at our bi-monthly meetings, constantly giving us wonderful advice and wisdom, and he has been a valuable asset to our team. Next, we have Eric Tallman, who you know is the president of the GPIA. He is an advocate for the preservation of green space in Northeast LA, and is active and a very involved member of the community. And also, Eric never gets any sleep because he is always working on community events and activities. And I really don't know how this guy does it. He is a tireless worker and a real asset to our community. Yeah. All right, next is Dean Walraff, who most of you met, so I'm going to just do a little abbreviated bio. So Dean is an attorney and executive director for Advocates for the Environment, a public interest law firm and environmental advocacy organization. And he is currently working with us with the Walnut Canyon Community Alliance, which is a sister organization of Friends of Walnut Canyon, because Friends of Walnut Canyon is not allowed to get into any lawsuits because we are with the GPIA. All right, so next up we have the wonderful Mark Kenyon, who is also married to Claire, who spoke earlier. Mark is a 31-year resident of Northeast Los Angeles and the executive director of Northeast Trees, where he leads a team that plants thousands of native trees each year, engages and trains hundreds of local at-risk youth, designs and builds local parks, and advocates for cleaner and greener schools and community facilities. He's been a community activist and volunteer on many local projects and organizations, including working to save our threatened open spaces, such as Rainbow Canyon, El Rio Canyon, Heidelberg Park, Elephant Hill, Flat Top, and others. He is currently on the board of the Mount Washington Alliance and the Los Angeles General Plan Consistency Coalition. Welcome, Mark. And next we have Paolo Perrone. Paolo is the senior planning deputy with the office, is the project manager. I know you, I just met with you recently, I'm sorry. I need a little more coffee. Paolo is the project manager and the Southern Conservation Fellow at the Trust for Public Land. His responsibilities include land acquisition from Ventura to Orange County with a focus on the San Gabriel Mountains. In addition to land acquisition, Paolo supports efforts to expand access to public lands, generate funding for parks and open space, and assist partner organizations across the region. Paolo previously worked for the Nature Conservancy, as well as a consultant on a variety of conservation projects. Welcome, Paolo.
I would also like to add that our sixth panel member is Susan Olson Davis, who is a tireless worker and frequently answers my emails at 11:30 at night, which is scary. And she's been involved in many meetings with elected officials and agencies, so she's a fountain of knowledge herself, so if you have a question for her, feel free to ask her.
Okay, so, and I'll also moderate this too, so thank you. All right, so what's our first question? You want to stand up and just...
Sure. I guess the Gerald, where does Councilman Steele stand in all this? I mean, is he behind the preservation? Is he behind the developers? Is he agnostic at this point?
Uncommitted?
Well, first of all, I want to thank GPA for inviting our office here today. I've been with the city family a while, and I was reflecting driving here about Joan Lundy. I mean, wow, she was the first woman geologist in the state of California.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
She was.
Yeah, wow.
And she also was a great advocate and committed. So I think that legacy for GPA to continue to embrace that and continue the work is just very inspiring. There you go. My job as a planning deputy is to advise the council member on the facts. He's going to ultimately make the policy position or take that position. I know there's a meeting set up for next month.
Yes.
He wants to hear about the community issues here. He's aware. My job, though, is the facts. The fact is, what we have before the city family is a proposed 32-house project. So we were talking about zoning, the land use, the CEQA. There are different layers here that still need to be going through. The decision maker here will be the planning department. Certainly it's appealable to the Area Planning Commission. If there's a challenge to the environmental, it'll come formally before the city council. So that's really my job, to give them the full picture. Now, I see a lot of development battles in the city council. You know, we have to look at the facts, ma'am, but also in the end, the council members weigh out where they're gonna land. So that's just a way of saying, maybe we'll find out when you do meet with him, where he wants to go in what direction. Having said that, I appreciate the conversation here around the shifting political environment or the funding picture. Our office has been involved in open space acquisitions, and it requires several elements. Number one, willing parties, a willing seller. Number two, what is the price? Number three, what's the funding source? It's a basic real estate transaction. Here we have a private developer, apparently over time perhaps has acquired the lots, because I didn't know the ownerships were kind of parcelized before. Possibly has a very low base if it were acquired over time. The fact is, in terms of land use, there's a specific plan. So the planning department has required 32 separate project permit applications. So they will render a decision on the specific plan, whether or not the houses comply with the specific plan, which includes tree protections and land use. Number two, is the EIR adequate, and should the city certify it? So as we've talked about, there's going to be multiple tracks going forward, and it has yet to formally come before the city council. But I would think the council member would want to weigh out all sides. He tends to listen to all sides, and we have a whole history of acquisitions. On our time clock, the city acquired parcel G2, which Helene and others, GPIA, are actively engaged as to the future vision of that. That acquisition alone will, for the very first time, create public access to the Elliott River. And so we worked before historically on acquisitions. I mean, TPL also plays a role of intermediary, and as Claire shared, all these acquisitions over time take all the ingredients to come together.
Thank you. All right, so who wants to open you?
Yeah, just if I could follow up on this a little bit. One, there are many routes to opposition that have been laid out, all of which are important. But the thing that stood out to me was a statement that with Councilman Cedillo's opposition, this would not take place. And he can be our hero. And I think it is very important that he speak out in a clear and unambiguous way, not on subtle issues, but at the core issue of what this project is and what the aspirations are for this area. It seems to me, and I think I may speak for others, that come the next election, the single greatest issue that's going to be out there is celebrating the councilman's support for the community or damning it. And I think, on a personal level, I know I want to volunteer at my home, which there have been many community meetings in the past. For either of those purposes, my hope is the celebration. Thank you.
You know, also Bob brought up a good point. If anybody else is interested in volunteering their home for fundraisers, coffees, things like that, please let us know or email us. That'd be great. Oh, you've been wanting, Maria.
Yeah, I want to know who picks up the environmental analyst who provides those reports? Is it the developer? Is it the city?
She wants to know who picks the environmental analyst.
Oh, Mark, you want to?
I'll answer that one.
So,
there's theoretically how it's supposed to work and how it actually works. And Dean actually kind of already answered this earlier. Practically speaking, in the city of Los Angeles, the developer hires the EIR consultant. They basically lead that effort. There's no contractual relationship between the city and the person that's actually producing this. Legally, the city of Los Angeles, the planning department has to exercise their independent judgment on the EIR, and then that will produce the final document. That's what's actually, in fact, happening now. We won't know till that document's actually issued, whether, to the degree to which the city actually exercised their independent judgment and listened to our comments or, dealt with them. In most cases, and maybe all cases, the developer is actually, their consultant is actually responding to those. And in most cases, all cases, the EIR will not have addressed our concerns adequately. And so that's where the next phase, as Dean said, is for us to continue to put in comments and then to work with the council office to do this. There is, just to take a page out of Elephant Hill, then Councilmember Villaraigosa and then later Councilmember Huizar both actively fought that development project. To the point even at one case where the city attorney actually had to go into Villaraigosa's office and pull the paperwork off of his desk because in the city attorney's opinion, they didn't want to engage in a lawsuit. Under Councilmember Huizar, in fact, Huizar got the city to sue the developer over what was, an identified weakness in their EIR. We had identified it, as Claire said, it was a 15 or 21-year-old EIR. We had identified the weakness, and what it took was a rainy year where a bulldozer got stuck up to it and couldn't actually move. Taking that one picture was worth 1,000 words, and actually then led the city to be able to acquire it. So it's really the developer that's doing this. The city does take it on. I would, as I think the gentleman earlier encouraged the council member to really take a serious look at this EIR and potentially supporting the idea of not certifying it, like get the city to take on the burden that we would have to take on and those sort of things. So that's what I would say about that.
Have you approached the fire department in this?
Have
you approached the fire department in this? Because there have been other developments on the hill in the past where, they're coming off of a cul-de-sac that's very narrow and building 32 new homes, and there's no other egress down the division. The fire department has been our friend in the past where they objected to this type of development off of a cul-de-sac because their equipment can't get there.
I turn it off, turn yours off.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Does any of you want to answer that question about the fire department?
So I was just looking at the map.
Yeah.
Certainly there are comments that went into the EIR process that were talking about that.
They might be an ally.
Well, I was just looking at the back. I don't remember actually on this one. So the fire department rule for this sort of thing is that you have to have 700 feet. Well, if the project is beyond 700 feet, you have to have two ingress, you have to have at least a secondary ingress and egress point. But often in the hillside, we, sort of theoretically have that. But particularly in this area, you look at like on Kinney, you look at some of what they consider their secondary access, and it's actually very convoluted, and it goes up and over and around, and you have to know, and even if you know the hillside over in those areas well, they're hard to get, to know, and the fire department in many cases doesn't know them, and so I call those theoretical secondary access points. And this one, maybe Dean or someone who knows, Eric, do you know where the what the two, they would come down Haverhill, and then they could go out Division, or they could make the left at Cazador. And then, so it's probably, the length coming down Haverhill is probably less than 700 feet. And so they can either go out Division, or they can go out Cazador. And that technically meets the fire department's rules. Almost certainly in the record, there's a letter from the fire department saying that they're in compliance.
Well, they also can go up Brilliant. That's the third road they're extending.
Oh, they're
Yes,
extending
exactly.
They're extending Brilliant, Haverhill, and Sundown, all
Oh.
three.
Very active. Okay.
So again, technically, they probably meet the requirement, and so there'll be a letter in the record. I've often gone to hearings and have complained because really practically, people don't know, and in fact, the fire department oftentimes doesn't understand our road systems well enough to be able to get access to them. They know the one way in. Fire trucks try to come into these, you know, we had a fire on our street, and they actually couldn't get up our street. It took 10 minutes for the fire department to actually get to this house that was on fire. The gentleman, who was a 94-year-old World War II veteran, died in the fire simply because the fire department couldn't get around a legally parked pickup truck because the street's only 18 feet wide. So where's the fire department on this? There are rules, and if you don't technically meet the 700 feet, then that's easy to defeat a project. In this case, they've certainly figured out some way around that.
Okay, move with the gentleman in the back. I'll get to you next.
My question is for the gentleman from CDO's office, but a brief background to the question. This area, I'm a local realtor. I talk to a lot of people who want to move here and people who do. And one of the allures and unique things about this area is the wildlife that we have here. Is the coyotes, the hawks, the owls. It's very rare to have that in a major city. It kind of feels like you don't live in the city. And I can't think of another metropolitan area, a major metropolitan area, that has a neighborhood like this where we have coyotes and hawks and owls and such. Does the councilman realize how special that is and how unique it is and how rare it is? And if so, if he could take a look from the outside in, I think he would realize it's worth fighting for.
I believe the Mountains Recreation, maybe some people have engaged in the Santa Mountain Conservancy years ago, has done studying around wildlife corridors and the chain of open space that extends throughout the area. I'm sure that's been documented, right, Claire, I imagine? We represent, for example, in Lincoln Heights, Paradise Hill, 30 acres, and you come to this side. And so perhaps also the venues and the environmental to document that chain of open space which serves the wildlife corridor. As a realtor, though, as you well know, the market has shifted. I'm seeing an uptick in development activity throughout our whole council district, including Northeast Los Angeles. Hence, a lot of development activity even in the mountainous hillside areas. My thought is that this is technically a legally subdivided swath of land. Those lines there that show 32 lots on paper is legal. It's a tract map. So it's just that this one developer acquired over time the individual parcels. And so I think the councilman would appreciate the chain of open space. I think that's something that's hopefully can be part of the dialogue. I think that's part of the reasons the community is coming together, whether it's the walnut trees or the wildlife corridor. I mean, these are elements, obviously, that community members appreciate living in this neighborhood. I mean, in the Mount Washington specific plan, which by the way, I was a junior planner in the 90s, I was on staff and supported the advisory committee. If you look at the purpose statements, it articulates all the qualities of this neighborhood that people want to preserve. And so I think that's probably a salient point to bring up in your dialogue with the
Oh,
council.
yeah, right, with all of the facts.
And I'd
And
like
also,
to-
I encourage you, if you could email us, and if you want to be part of our discussion, it's great to have a realtor on board too, who recognizes the value of the diminishing green space. I'm sorry.
And just a very quick response to Gerald's comment is, yes, there are 32 parcel lots, but I do want to explain they were parceled in the 1930s or the 1940s. That's when LA did all the parceling in Northeast LA. So I honestly believe that what occurred 75 years ago does not reflect the current environment in our neighborhood.
Just a you're gonna leave, all right, you and then you next, I'm sorry, she's got to leave, I'm sorry. Just-
Yeah, it's an add-on, and concerning the wildlife, which I live for wildlife, some of my best friends are animals. I live the other side of the hills from Walnut Canyon.
We've met, yeah.
Walnut Canyon. We've lived there since the early 90s, and we've already seen species disappear, such as the red-tailed hawk, and also the giant owls. I haven't seen those for years.
They move over. There's no area.
Yeah. Well, hold that thought. You know, because what's it called? The construction, the new builders, they're sneaking in here, sneaking in there, blocking off a beautiful little canyon where the red-tails used to nest and all this good stuff. So my question is, what was it? Move on, give them somewhere to move to. You know, to me, this open space becomes more important because we've sacrificed their homes in other parts of these things. And I want to say, how many more sacrifices do we need to make of the wildlife?
Yeah, and I think that's something important when we meet with Gil Cedillo to bring that up and have the facts. And
I mean,
can we be in touch too? Because we need to basically build a case, aren't you?
Yeah.
To build a case with all of the facts.
I must admit, I go for human enjoyment of wildlife, but I go beyond that as well. I respect the wildlife.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Please, we've met
I
before,
think
so.
we should beware of that usual arrogance of just dismissing our cohabitants on this planet. I have to go.
Thank you. Okay. All right. With the hat on, I'm sorry, you've been waiting patiently. Yes, stand up, you. Yes, you're waiting so patiently. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane. I live on Berry Knoll, which, as some of you know, is another development with 28 houses planned. My question is this, and it's less than 1,000 feet from Walnut Canyon. Is it feasible for the neighborhood to hire our own environmental impact report to present to these agencies that shows these parcels were developed in the 20s and 30s when it was a pie-in-the-sky idea to put houses there, with the street structures in place, with the existing population up there, the squeezing out of the wildlife? It's no longer relevant what happened 60 years ago. I mean, is it not okay for us to do an environmental that would include the 28 to Berry, the 32 for Walnut, and how many others are planned?
I think that's a Dean question, it's an attorney question. Yeah. Okay.
The sort of short answer is yeah, but you can't really do the environmental impact report, but what you can do and what we can do in this case is to document what you're talking about, and it won't be in the draft EIR because they're going to write the draft EIR, but you can get it into the final EIR by submitting it as comments. So it's really important not to just send in a comment saying I don't like the project and it's going to mess up my traffic. What you need is to have evidence that's submitted along with comment letters. And sometimes people put in, sometimes I throw in a book. It'll be like, here's a book saying that your neighborhood cats are going to kill all the birds, and then I reference it in a comment letter, and it's in the record, and it's kind of establishes the factual basis for what I'm saying. So that's essentially what they do in an EIR, is to evaluate the environmental effects and put in enough background reports from experts that they support the conclusions in the EIR. Well, we can do the same thing on our side. We don't need to write the EIR. What we need to do is focus on those places where we have something to say and we have some evidence to back it up. And that's a really important part of this process.
So they piecemeal it. What they do is I'm building this house and I'm building these two houses, ignoring the fact that they've purchased 28 plots or 32 plots. And when you add those together, you're looking at probably 200 new cars on the hill. And I don't know about you, but getting on and off the hill is not easy anymore. I've been up there since 1974, and you used to be able to walk safely. Now you walk at your own risk.
Yeah, two comments that I would add to it. So I've been very much interested in the Berry Knoll projects and what's happening over there, their relationship to Walnut Canyon, what's happening over off of Kinney. And what I would recommend, again, back to the to the council member is, so the cumulative impacts of the So you know our Ganymede lawsuit that we're doing that's related to Barry Knoll very closely. In fact, Barry Knoll is the main reason why we're pursuing all of that action. So the cumulative impacts of all of the development, particularly on the RE11, RE20 type lots, has impacted the R1 lots, but you can be guaranteed that none of that has been analyzed in the CEQA document. And so again, we would come back and ask that the council members seriously look at having the city this time take on the legal expenses and, you know, and defend the community's interests as opposed to the developer's interest. That's not necessarily, by the way, just this council member, that's usually what happens at the city. So, but this is one where I think the EIR is likely, just, you know, I haven't seen the final yet, but I'm gonna guess that it's likely to be so weak that this is a legitimate one where, you know, what happened on Elephant Hill with Councilmember Weezer could be redone maybe over here. So that's where, I mean, that would be my first real request to the council members, that he come walk the property, take a look at it, and then find a way to help us positively, you know, get to the park, you know, by helping us bring the developer to the table. So that's one. The second one is to the community. So getting back to what Dean was saying, you know, the final's going to come out. We can put in comments all the way up until the final city council hearing. Part of what would help this effort is for us to put in expert. I'm not an expert on grading, for example, or haul routes or traffic. Maybe I'm an expert on trees. So it would help Dean's case if we, the community, can help finance the hiring of experts. And so that means we got to open up our wallets, put in donations. We're talking, you know, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars if we had to go down the whole route. You know, the whole process that Dean talked about earlier. And, you know, but right now we're talking about just a few $1,000s to hire some experts. You know, once the final EIR comes out, Dean will be able to tell the Friends what would help him, where he thinks we ought to go do those. We can identify those experts and pay for them. So I just, you know, if the biggest impact we could have is to actually hire people that could put in comments into the record that would actually then, you know, when it gets before city council, so the council member himself could then read these things and see that the sort of views that we're trying to put forward are in fact, you know, valid. It's not just my opinion. Here's an expert that can, you know, state those things.
Yeah. We're going to have to just move on because we're running out really short on time. I just want to get to everybody. You had a question you've been patiently waiting to.
Yeah. So I want to preface my question with I fully support the green space, and I think you know, 32 more houses would be a terrible idea. But I do notice that the map actually goes over my house in the park. So I actually live on that land, not that side, but the other side. And this is the first time I actually heard that there was going to be a park, or somebody was trying to put a park basically over where my families live.
Well, really, it's just showing that that's where all the land is. Like that, it's not that we're trying to work on Walnut Canyon right now, and then.
But the comment was made that all of that green space is what they're looking at eventually making the whole park.
Right. Well, we would love to talk to you, and no, believe me, this is a long road. This is going to take a long time. So please, if you could talk to us afterwards, we would love to talk to you because. I don't know, unless you want to have a lot of homes around there, whatever is available.
No, I'm not looking to have any houses.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, so like I came here because of the 32 houses, but then, you know, I see the map and I'm kind of like, whoa.
So you're surprised?
That's a little, you know, kind of like where I live.
Yeah. No, it's just like the greater goal would be lovely to have a park, and I'm sure you'd like to have a park around your house instead of a bunch of other houses. But no, please, let's talk afterwards because this is great. Like we're trying to get everybody, like I said earlier, activated in the community and all of us coming together. Like we want to hear what you have to say because I'm sure you have some insight for us too. So please, could you be in touch? What's your name?
Mark.
Mark. Okay, Mark. I'm Susan. All right. All right. So we have a few more questions, you guys. We're really going to try to wrap this up. You've been waiting very patiently too. So.
Hi, I'm Randy, and I've sat in meetings with you, Gerald, for a couple of years now, working with Mark Kenyon on the Barry Knoll and Walnut Canyon. So this may be a very obvious question, so forgive me. Hearing all the community passion knowing that we have a seller who's willing to sell, knowing that we have new funding, what's the missing piece to get Councilman Cedillo completely passionate about this? What's missing? I can't figure that out. What's the missing piece?
Perhaps he needs to hear those elements. The developers say it, I'm a willing seller. I mean, I've heard it expressed today. I don't think they expressed that explicitly to the council office or to the member. That's one element. I'm a willing seller. What is the price? Property appraisal, valuation is both an art and a science. Developer argue I have development rights based on a legally subdivided swath of land, 32 houses. I hadn't heard this perspective from Eric that, well, it's from the back in the day. Standards have changed. Houses are bigger. The impacts have changed compared to when Mount Washington Cell Park was about, what were they, cabins? I don't know. So I really hadn't heard that perspective, but the fact is, today, it's a legally subdivided piece of land. Developers say I have development rights based on the zoning. And so the city council does sit in closed session often around settlement agreements or payouts. So I know Elephant Hill was mentioned, that was a tussle around for kind of the same issue. Land has development rights, but the city, to get to a no. And what I appreciate, by the way, in this dialogue is that I'm hearing the leadership and the community say not just no, let's get to a no. What I really appreciate is the homework everyone has done today, bringing in all parties to thoughtfully think through getting to this outcome. So again, all these issues aren't necessarily black and white. I think the councilman likes to hear and weigh out all issues. I can't speak for him as to what is the missing piece other than the council also is advised by the city attorney on land use and development matters and CEQA. So he has to play that role. I know that I'm hearing people would like him to be that passionate person to get up and just say, throw it all out, and I'm against the project, and let's have that part. But I think there are going to be multiple steps. Yes. To get to that outcome.
Give him a crown.
It would be a great part of his legacy.
Well, just real quick, I just want, Paolo, did you want to weigh on that? Because Trust for Public Land, you guys, this is Paolo from the Trust for Public Land. They are expert negotiators with buying park space and, well, seasoned, yeah. So if you want to just.
Yes, I would just say to that point, at this point there's a lot of unknowns in terms of purchase price. There's a couple appraisals out there that have been done a couple of years ago that personally I don't think reflect the existing value of the land. And so the seller is going to look at, what they can get from an open space purchase price versus what they can get developing the homes, and they have to make that decision. So yeah, they're a willing seller at some inflated price, but at this point they put a lot of cash into the time and effort to get the development going. So that's a big piece. It's just how much they're willing to accept. And we do have to have a third-party appraisal to access public funding, and typically, purchase of open space in general comes from grants, and there is some money out there, but the majority of the money needed to purchase these properties is not liquid at this point. I'd say the most likely funding source would be November 2016's ballot measure, Measure A. That money is still being sort of collected. One, it's also being planned in its allocation and will not likely be online until late 2018, early 2019. So we have a little bit of time before that is readily available. And then the developer's going to want to see where the EIR plays out, right? Because at the end of the day, if they can develop the property, they're going to get a lot more money than if they sell it for open space. It's just that they want to figure out where that's going to play out. So that's why everybody's sort of waiting. And I've walked the property, talked to the seller. He said he's willing, but at this point they still have a lot of unknowns to figure out.
Yeah, and then also, Dean, the EIR is supposed to be coming out in the next month, right? Isn't that what you heard?
FDR. So, yeah, a small number of months.
Let me just have Ruben. Ruben, you had a question?
Quick question. I haven't heard anything about the neighborhood council, GPNC. Has this been brought up to the neighborhood council, and where do they stand?
Actually, Helene can.
They play a
Key.
very important key role in this, as I am a board member at Atwater Neighborhood Council. So my question is, if you guys are aware of this, where you guys stand, and how strong you guys?
Very strong. We've made our stand years ago. We continue to. And we are fully supporting this latest incarnation of community effort to preserve Walnut Canyon.
Because we need we actually need your, like, hard push against, not against the deal, but on the deal.
Do you have a resolution?
We have so many letters on file. You open that file and you have the neighborhood council over the years continually weighing in.
Okay, so we can talk afterwards too more, but yeah, Helene is actually on the Planning and Land Use Committee for the GPNC too, and for years. Yeah, right, and they're gonna have a meeting, I don't know if you heard earlier, if you heard, they're gonna have a meeting with the developer coming up in the next month or two, and so if you get on our email list, we'll alert you to that date. So we'll try to get to all the questions in the very back. You had a question?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Bill Cias, I live in Warren, Hazard, and Panamint. So the land purchase expert just told us that developer is willing to sell. It's a function of the present value of the profit on the project, and that's the dispute. He's also explained that the funding source will not be coming online, if I heard correctly, for another 2 or 3 years. So these create contingencies that threaten the viability of the initial target, which is to challenge this part of the project. Having, for the sake of conversation, if those things are true, is there any secondary analysis about buying the parcels immediately adjacent to that project in order to form a wedge and a blocking position to protect the balance of that canyon area that you're trying to preserve? Because if you push up against that development and you block that position out, now you've got a foothold in that entire canyon, and then the ability to talk to local political officials and say, now we want to expand and buy the rest of this and protect it. So in effect, we're cutting our losses and protecting and defending what we can on a going forward basis, given the uncertainties that we're looking at. Because this one's being developed. This guy can see the money, he can see that pipeline, he knows that his projected profit is. These other people aren't trying to develop their land yet, and therefore they're not in the same position economically or politically. So the question is there strategic planning that takes a look at these secondary goals?
I think Mark or Eric, you might be able to.
So I think the 32 home development is the strategic blocking strategy. But there isn't anything, there aren't other lots that I'm aware of that would block it in turn. If this project were to be, if these particular lots are put into the public hands, then it makes that 700-foot rule that I said about the fire department makes it harder, because then you wouldn't be able to extend Haverhills, Sundown, etc. And so it makes then those other lots, less, able to do something. Those other lots also, I mean, maybe this gentleman Mark back here owns one of those. They're zoned RE40, RE20, I believe, and so subdividing those lots into other things is already going to be difficult. So really, the battle we want to fight is this one. The only thing that I would say to what Paolo said, again, just from the sort of community activist side, is that so there are other funds other than Prop A. I personally would like to see the council member and the supervisor use their leadership to go after either Prop 1 funds that are in the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy's hands, or that are still available up at the state's level. AB 32 funds, which is the Air Resources Board funds, could be used to purchase this property. Most of the grants that come down for those are maybe $1 million or less, so it's not actually going to purchase these, so we would need something special. There are monies available now, even at the city. The city just spent $54 million to buy the G2 parcel on the LA River. This is in the watershed for the LA River. So funds that are the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy has used in the past to purchase land that's not directly touching the river can in fact, those funds can in fact be used to purchase these properties. So we shouldn't Paolo's view is the right one, I think. It's the most likely move forward are the Prop 8 funds, but they're still out a little, a year and a half. But I think there's money that, that could be brought to the table. If the price could be negotiated that meets, we could in fact, maybe find some other funds to buy it, and then maybe we swamp it. And TPL is, they're the experts at that sort of stuff. They don't necessarily have the money. They have, it's the supervisor or Kevin De Leon at the state level, or the council. And it may not be just one of them. It may be that we need to tap 2 or 3 pots of money. So, I think we need to get creative about it. I think the very, very first thing is the council member needs to walk this property. It needs to become his vision, the thing that we're all trying. I think that just walking the property will converts people. Also, I think the other thing is that, so this is a very park poor area. So this is under the general plan status for this thing. This park would service approximately 20,000 people. It's a lot of people that live within a half-mile radius of this area. Many of them are from disadvantaged and certainly underserved households, and so I think that we can make a very good case as to why, and there's no other place to build a park. I mean, that's actually, within that easy thing. So
yeah, and that's something we learned when we met with Hilda Solis's office too, that according to the 2016 LA Park Study, basically commissioned by the Board of Supervisors, that Glassell Park is park poor. So that is something that works in our favor. All right, so let's get to some more questions. All right, you've been holding up your hand? Yes, you. Yeah, you. Yes, yes.
Hi, since we're talking money, I think the community has a right to know, do we even have a ballpark figure of how much it's going to cost to purchase that landfill or all that canyon? Do we even have a ballpark? How much better?
Does anybody want to answer that?
You want to answer that, Susan?
At this point, I'd say at least 5 million, probably in the 5 to 10 range, and which is on the higher end of park acquisitions. Certainly not as big as a G2 or Bionah Wetlands, but yeah, I mean it's going to be many millions of dollars, and I think that's one of the reasons why. Personally, I think that Measure A is going to be critical to this effort, is because it's more agnostic in its funding, whereas I think you could get some funding for Prop 1, but this is not like a major water sort of property. It's watershed, which is great, but I think to cobble together over $5 million, we would have to be very creative in tapping a lot of different state sources. Whereas I think, with $94 million projected annually from Measure A, I think it's going to be a little bit more of a simpler ask. And to your point, I think it being park poor puts it high on the list of that Measure A money, and then also. Particularly with dealing with the supervisors, I found that sort of couching the project as serving larger than just the community it's in is very important. Saying this is a regional asset. It's not just the neighbors that are going to use this park. It's going to be the larger community, potentially schools and things like that. So that's just kind of a general idea I have with pitching funding to the supervisors.
Okay, so
Just a quick part on that, and I think to you. Okay, so we have a general idea. I guess my big question is, we know, we're assuming they're going to hold out for the maximum price. Is that not true? I mean, what leverage do we have to get them to accept a reasonable price?
Well, basically, it's not a negotiation. We appraise the property. We get a third-party appraiser. You said appraisers. It is an art. It's not a science. The appraisals I've seen, I like some of them, I don't like others. It's very important to get the correct appraiser, and part of that is doing it with the seller. Oftentimes, we sort of lead them to folks that we like to work with. What's important is that the appraisals meet certain standards, particularly for the state. The Department of General Services has very well-written guidelines. The U.S. Professional Appraisal Standards, things like that, those are kind of givens. But when we get an appraisal, it's not like I can say, the appraisal said $7 million, and they say, well, we'll do 9, and I go, okay, how about 8? It's 7. It's what the appraisal says, and we can look at the appraisal and look at maybe some deficiencies, and like a CEQA document, appraisals can miss things, and maybe there's some value movement that can be done with some more information added, but it really is that document, and they're welcome to offer us a purchase price lower than the appraised value, but I certainly cannot pay more.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more, oh, right here? Okay, Jeff?
Yeah, okay, so, and this is it. Anyway, this could get a little bit off my, but I want to make sure that in terms of commenting on the environmental impact report, that the comment would be efficacious. And, okay, like the lots were drawn up in the 30s. Well, recently, like Lucy Jones, like the count with Lucy Jones, the earthquake people, they've done new mapping of what they call the Raymond Fault. And the Raymond Fault goes all along York Boulevard, turns into Eagle Rock Boulevard, and connects over to the Hollywood Fault, which comes along Fletcher. So on all these new mapping, there are also maps of liquefaction zones and landslide zones. And all these lots are, landslide zones, and down at the bottom, because it feeds the watershed, is, liquefaction area too. So these, how do we, and I'm really shocked that the environmental impact reports, developers hire the person who writes the report. Well, that's sort of like, we can enter a universe of alternative facts by allowing that. Like, that would be something that would have to be changed on a legislative level, so we get, impartial environmental impact.
I can respond to that a little bit. I actually just met with a landowner Tuesday who's got a development, and they did lose several of their lots because of a fault line was running through the lots. So, if there is newly discovered faults running through the property, absolutely they will lose those lots. It's more of I think a public messaging campaign to say, well, they're near a fault, but that also may just be that they are required to build to higher standards. So absolutely, it's something to bring up in the secret document.
Dr. Tom, did you want to say something too?
Yeah. Might say, I recently commented on Crossroads Hollywood, which is a big project over in the Hollywood area. But the central issue, and Dean has pointed this out, get all of your comments, thoughts about it, concerns, worries, whatever you want to call them. Get them on an email, send them to Walnut Canyon people, so that we can take those and get them into the final EIR as comments, because it may only be a single thread, but if you can start pulling on it and it goes into litigation, every issue that is proposed for the EIR can be a tripping point. And I might say faults. Is the adequacy of the document sufficient to identify faults within the area? Do they have to mitigate it? But get them in to just a simple email, 3 lines, 2 lines, into Walnut Canyon people, and we can help. I say I've done 400 plus EIRs, EISs, EAs, and a few others since 1972. The standards haven't really changed all that much. So get anything that you worry about, just a simple note. We can convert it to a comment. So that's all.
Thank you. Okay, so I think one more from Susan and then one more, and then we're going to wrap it up. But people, hopefully some of you can stay too. But we have 2 more questions. So Susan, and then we'll go to you. All right, Susan?
Okay, quick question. I want to shift gears a bit on the haul route. Is there a chance that the haul route could or would be changed? For example, if there are 1 or more accidents, as they're almost guaranteed to be on that particular street, would the city then say you can't drive down the street anymore, you have to take a different path?
Okay, so at this phase, it's the environmental review phase. There's a draft EIR. Members of the community have submitted comments. And final EIR is where the city planning department responds to each comment and then puts that forward before the decision maker, which is the director of planning. Now, there is a process for approving haul routes down the line, which is the Building and Safety Commission. The project will have to file for a haul route approval, and I think in that venue, that's also an opportunity to point out the impacts of the proposed haul route and to argue for an alternative haul route, or that's where the Building and Safety Commission could put conditions, modify it. I mean, if it's so overwhelmingly impactful, they'd have to weigh that out. And other people have comments on haul routes.
Okay, all right. Oh, you know, actually, could we, since we do have to wrap it up, Susan, you could talk more about it later? Or you, all right, and then one last question, okay.
Yes, I would like to comment on the same lady asked about the price. And I know a lot, the community should be aware to buy the whole thing while it is cheap and unimproved, because the prices of the lots are under 100,000, especially when there is no road. You know, if they would purchase the other areas now, before they do any plans to building, they could get it much more cheaper before they make plans to build. Because now it seems it's an enormous amount for the land where there is no road, nothing. Suddenly the price goes up because they just made plans to build. So
Did any of you want to comment on that?
there's a big difference in the price.
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, there's a couple ways to look at it. They're not going to sell it for cheap. So that's
Because they're
part of the
looking how
problem.
much they're going to make on it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, and we only work with willing sellers, and you can only use taxpayer dollars to purchase property from willing sellers. And so it'd be great if we could get it for the price they paid for it, but I don't think they're going to sell it for the price they paid for it. And every step they get in the process to achieve entitlements, you know, every step they get towards actually putting, you know, foundations down, the price gets more expensive, and that's just the way it is. But, you know, don't be discouraged. I think, you know, if we can get them to a purchase price, you know, I think we could probably get the grant money. So, yeah, I'd love to pay what they pay for it, but just don't think that's going to happen.
I think she was referring to the other two plots, not the 32 plots. The adjacent ones.
Yeah.
Buy it now so that they cannot push forward.
Continue.
Sure. Yeah, that's I think a great idea.
Is it one owner that owns all of that?
No.
No, and that's a talk that we've been having with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. So we don't know the outcome yet, but we are. But I think,
Well, I just wanted to say, so just sort of more generally in this, so this area of Los Angeles, most of Northeast Los Angeles is very park poor. So $5 million to buy that, you know, small amount of land, cheaper at half the price. You know, we should just buy it.
Yeah.
And we should be, and we actually need in this area $50 million to buy parkland because we're park poor. If we don't actually, and if we had bought it 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, when the city actually adopted our general plan that said that they wanted to have neighborhood parks and community parks within a half mile of each of our homes, it would have cost us a lot less. We, the citizens of Los Angeles and our elected officials have neglected to do that for pretty much all of us in Northeast LA. We have to get over the fact that that it's going to cost us a lot of money. Are parks worth having? Do our children need to have access to these spaces? And the answer, I would say, is yes. And so if we're going to do it, we just have to find willing sellers. We have to, you know, put forward money. The Prop A, you know, will be coming online, and that will certainly help. There will be the park bond that we're working on up at the state level, and that will really help a lot. We haven't had a park bond in the state of California for 40 years, I think it is. And you know, so in the urban environment, it's going to cost a lot of money, where in other areas it won't cost a lot of money because of the value of our land. And this developer has the right to build, you know, we just want to be able to find access to the right funds and a way to, you know, convince them to sell it to us. And I think that we ought to. I think we're very close. We need leadership from both our supervisor and our city council member. I think that it's a very positive time. The times have changed. It's just in the last year that, you know, we can make this happen. I'm hoping we can make it happen without having to deploy Dean, right? That's really what I'm asking the council members. I'd like the council, we can deploy the council member instead of Dean. So that's what I would like to ask.
just say one more thing. You know, please don't quote me on a purchase price. We don't know what it's going to appraise at. It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 15. It's still worth it. We'll still take a shot at it. The money will be out there, but we really don't know. I'm just saying it's order of magnitude. It's going to be a good chunk of change, but certainly something that, you know, folks on this panel and in this room are capable of pulling the funds together to get this done. So, thanks.
All right, so on that note, we're going to wrap it up, and thank you so much for coming.